Do you know what is nice command in Linux?
Sorry, could you repeat that? What is
Nice command, nice.
nice?
Yeah, nice command.
No, Jayesh, I am not sure about that. Nice. NICE.
NIC. NICE, yes. NIC. Nice.
No, not sure about that, Jayesh. I'll check that up.
Okay. Okay. So let's say if I'm trying to connect my EC2 instance, okay, using Telnet, but it is not happening. It is not connecting. So what would be the possible root cause, or like what will be the possible causes?
Okay, so you are trying to connect to EC2 instance using Telnet. So one thing is Telnet is the security level of Telnet is much lower than SSL. So if you are if you are trying to create it, in case you are trying to create it, let's say you are doing it in your company servers, then what would happen is because Telnet is unsecure, the firewall will automatically block it. That is one thing. Because generally most of the EC2 instances are created using SSH, which is a lot more secure. Then so that is one particular case. And then also the port also matters. Now suppose the port that you are using for Telnet is not available, then also you will not be able to create that particular EC2 instance. And if I'm not wrong, Telnet uses port 22. And that is, if that particular port is already occupied, you will not be able to access your EC2 instance, or you will not be able to run your EC2 instance. So these two would be the most common errors whenever you're trying to launch EC2 instances using Telnet.
Okay. So do you know what is SE Linux?
Could you repeat that?
SE Linux, yes.
SE Linux. I'm not sure about that. I'll have to check that out. SE Linux. Is it a different version, like how you have Red Hat Linux and Ubuntu? Is it a different version of Linux?
No. It is something different.
Okay, I'll check that out.
Okay. So let's say we have I want to check some files. Okay, in my system, I want to check all the txt files. Okay, .txt files. Okay.
Okay.
And in the same time, I want to write it down in some file. The name of all the txt files, I want to note it down in some files. Okay. I want to find all the txt file, and I want the name of all those files in one file. So how we can do that?
Okay.
Can you like tell us?
So you would use the find command first.
Okay.
You would use find minus type f star.txt, so that will automatically pull up all the txt files. You can also add the command -max depth in order to make sure that the particular if you don't want to go into all the layers, if you don't want it to be completely recursive, you can add the max depth to limit it to a certain number of folders that it will search for. And then once you have done that, you can just pipe it. And so you would basically, I mean, I don't think you require to pipe it. You can just write that command and then append it into the new file that you want. So you can create a new file. Let's say I create touch data.txt or touch data, create the new file, and then I can just append using double brackets,
So
the
with
angular
that command,
bracket.
you will use touch command to create that file.
It's if you want to, or if you can also directly append it to a particular file and it will be automatically created. So you would just directly append that data. So you would click. So when you put find and find minus type f star.txt, what happens is it will basically give you all the extensions and it will be printed out. So now if you want to store that data in a file, you can just append the information directly onto whichever file that you want. So if you have the file already created using the touch command, otherwise you can just write the name of the file and it should automatically be created.
So what is W command does in Linux?
Linux W command. I think I've heard of a WC command where you can basically count the number of words, count the number of lines, count the
Oh,
number
no,
of
no,
letters.
apart from that, W, only W.
Only W. This I'll check that up. I'm not sure what exactly just W does. I remember WC, which is word count, but I'm not sure if W there is a command. I mean, I've not. I need to go back and check about the W command.
So how can we like change the like shell of current shell into some other shell? Like let's say if I want to change my bash shell to some other shell, how can do that?
So currently we are using the bash shell, and I want to change that into another shell.
Another shell.
I will have to check on that. I'm not, because we generally in our company we don't use any other shells. We always are using bash shell because it is very convenient for us, and all our shell scripts are run on bash. So never really looked at changing the shell of a particular changing the shell used in Linux. So I would need to look at that up. I will need to look that up.
Okay, so what is Ansible architecture? Like how it works?
So your Ansible architecture basically contains three components. The first component is your modules. Second component is plugins, and third component is the controller. So what it basically does is your modules are nothing but the the collection of commands which are used to run your different nodes, run the commands on the different particular nodes, and what needs to be done on those particular nodes. And then you have your plugins. So now if you want to try or basically if you want to use different kinds of executables in your modules, you would need to download the appropriate plugins. Like if I want to use, let's say if I want to use Terraform, I would need to have the Terraform plugin already available. And basically this will help in the automations and making sure that whatever files need to be executed are done correctly. And then you have your controller. That is basically the main machine where your Ansible is installed. So this is your basic Ansible architecture. So you have your modules. So from the modules, it'll basically check. So whatever commands are there in the modules, it will check using the appropriate plugins, and then it will run all those configurations.
Okay, so how does your AWS infrastructure looks like? You use AWS, right?
Yes, we do use AWS.
So how does like what are things we use and how all those are connected and configured?
So we use our own. We have an AWS VPC setup with the required subnets and as well as an internet gateway. We have, and then we also have its own CIDR block for that particular project. For the project that we are using, we have set up our own subnets and our CIDR blocks. And then we also have integrated CloudWatch, and basically to monitor the different resources that we would be using. And of course, we use different EC2 instances based on the requirements, and those are spun up using your Terraform modules, which we have already set up. And basically, the CI/CD is done through the Jenkins pipelines. So we use our EC2 instances as well, and we also use CloudTrail, which basically stores our logs, and then we store it in S3 buckets. We also use some EBS volumes for instances, but more often we prefer EFS because considering we are working on a single project. We use EFS to make sure all the particular data is stored in a single storage instead of having multiple EBS volumes for different instances. So this is basically the AWS structure that we use.
Okay, like see, these are the things which you told you use in AWS, right? Like,
Yeah.
can you tell me the architecture? Basically, architecture, like how, at what position, at what layer, and all those things are connected on what, how like traffic is flowing from outer world to your like inner VPC, through which and how all the like traffics are going through your resources.
Okay, so with the VPCs, we have both private as well as public subnets. So whenever we require access to the internet, we have an IGW setup within the VPC itself, and here which basically gives us access to the internet. And of course, we use our route tables, which are set up such that only the public subnets, the route tables for public subnets would have access to the internet. And we do have one NAT gateway, which is set up for accessing the we have certain S3 buckets, which sometimes require instructions coming in from outside from the public servers, from the public subnets. So we have set up NAT gateways and routed them accordingly using their IP addresses through the route tables. We also have certain security groups set up to ensure that the private subnets are accept data only from the internal IP addresses which we have set. And also we also make sure that the setup is completely done internally, so that there is no, for the private subnet, so that there is no external access possible unless of course we use the particular NAT gateway. And on the subnet levels, we also have set up a network access control list, which is done to ensure an additional layer of protection for our subnets. And here we have both incoming, we have limited both incoming as well as outgoing traffic. So that is the basic VPC setup that we use. Of course, we also use Route 53 in order to route the traffics that are coming. Considering we mostly handle HTTP and HTTPS, basically websites, we use Route 53 to ensure that the traffic is being routed accordingly. We prefer, we use latency routes to ensure that the traffic is being routed to minimum to the particular subnets which have the least latency. And we also use AWS secrets to make sure all our login credentials are safely stored and encrypted.
So you do not use load balancers and all?
Yes, we do use load balancers and autoscalers as well. So in case, so this is basically integrated using Lambdas. We have a Lambda function where in case the traffic to a particular VPC or a particular subnet increases, or the traffic to a particular instance increases, the load balancer will distribute it. Of course, when we started off with just a load balancer because we were able to distribute it among the available instances. But nowadays we use spot instances so that whenever it is required, an instance is created because it saves a lot of costs. So in those cases, we also have autoscalers in place. So in case the traffic does shoot up, especially sometimes during the weekends, the traffic does spike considerably. So for that, we have set up an autoscaler which is integrated with our load balancer, which spins up a new instance, and the traffic is routed using the load balancer. The traffic is routed through that.
So which all load balancers will you use?
I've used only an application load balancer. I do know that we also have network load balancers available, but we work more or less on the request level. So the load balancers that we use are all only application load balancers.
And what database do you use?
Sorry?
What database you use? Database.
So we have the database. So we use SQL as our database. So we have RDBS integrated to us through AWS itself. So we use SQL in that.
So in which layer or in which subnet you use that database?
We use it. So we use our database in a private subnet.
So directly your web servers are connected with your database. or like how you, what is the connection of, how you have established the connection between your web server and database?
So for the web service located in your in the private subnet. So sorry, in the public subnet. So and our database is in the private. So we use the root tables and set it up with a NAT gateway. And we have set it up such that only incoming data is allowed. Data cannot be extracted from that particular private subnet where our database is located.
You
So the
have
logs,
used NAT gateway to make connection between those.
yes.
Sure.
Mm. So we use Route 53 for online, and I'll check that up. Yeah, I'm not
That is
100%
something
sure.
else. Okay,
Okay.
check on that one. Okay. So, like, can you explain me like how to? You are using Kubernetes, right,
Yes.
to deploy your applications.
Hmm.
So, how are you deploying that? Like, how you have integrated that one, and where you have integrated that one, and which EKS cluster you are using? Like, which cluster you are, EKS or bare metal? Like,
So we have set up an EKS cluster now,
okay.
and we have different controllers that we have already deployed. Generally, whenever we are running any particular updates, we use a deployment controller. This ensures that the rollout is done one pod at a time. And we also have certain monitoring tools that are set up using the daemon sets,
No, not
which
monitoring
monitor all the.
set. Like,
Okay.
you use EKS, right? So like how
Yes.
now how you deploy your application on like on the EKS cluster? How you deploy that?
So we have all the data is basically stored in our Git repositories. All the files required, YAML files and all, are stored in the Git repositories, and we basically we use that repository to in order and deploy it into the clusters and basically run the program. So this is
Directly
actually
code
done.
will not get deployed in the EKS cluster, right? Environment. What you
No,
deploy in like what you deploy there?
I will need to check on that. I have to revise that case aspect of Kubernetes.
Okay. So check. So can you like okay? This will be direct question. Like how you have integrated your Kubernetes cluster EKS with Jenkins?
So for integrating the Kubernetes cluster with Jenkins, so I'll have to check this as well. Kubernetes with Jenkins.
Okay. Which all remote repository you are using?
Remote repository, we use it. So we use one in Terraform. We have one remote repository that we use
No,
in order
to
to
store your artifacts and all or
Hmm.
image. What the remote repositories you use?
So to store our images, we generally pull it up from the Docker Hub.
Docker.
All the images that are there. Yeah, we use Docker
Okay.
Hub and take the images from there.
Okay. So only Docker Hub you use.
As for the project that I'm working on, I've only seen Docker Hub being used, but I think for the other, there are different projects which use different
Okay.
repositories.
So how are your images going to Docker Hub?
Sorry, how are the images
Going to
being
Docker
pulled
Hub.
from Docker Hub
Yeah,
or
getting
being
no,
pushed?
not pulled means we can just run that it will get pulled, right?
Yeah, so getting
So,
pushed.
So
Uh,
in your pipeline, like when that artifact is coming, you're what you're doing, you're changing it into images, right?
yes.
And then it is getting like pushed to that remote repository that is Docker Hub. So how that is getting pushed?
Yes.
So what are the steps you have configured, or what are the things you have done so that it is getting pushed to that Docker Hub?
So, so the very first thing would be, so we also have Git repositories that are available, which we use to pull whatever configurations files that we have.
Okay.
And then we basically set it up. We basically pull the data from the Git repository, and then we set up our own. We have our own